Hey, welcome back to my sewing studio. I'm Connie Koch, and today is part 3, all about the sleeve, for our mess dress shirt Restyle. For today's things that you will need will be a pencil for marking, a seam ripper just in case you need it, as well as your pins, and some pressing tools. You see here I either have a sleeve board, which would really help if you have one, drag it out, or a seam sleeve roll right below that. And then in the back you see a pressing ham. It looks like a football, but it helps considerably with pressing your shoulder seams. As you can see, I have all my sleeve pieces here. Here's the cuff that we left aside for all this time. We're going to set it aside just for a little bit longer before we attach it. We have our pattern piece I have laid out, and the reason why is because see these little marks that we made before we pressed out our pattern piece and cut it out? We need to mark those on our fun fabrics now, but we will be doing that on the wrong side of the fabric. I also have my placket that we cut out. This was pressed and unfolded. I measured it out. If you saw my pink sticky note in the last episode, I measured it out at about 1.5 inches in the width. And when it was all folded inward, it measured to be about 1/2 inch for our placket. And if you also noticed, this I cut out on the cross grain. It went straight across instead of vertical. The reason why is because we want that little bit of stretch. It's kind of like bias tape, and we're going around a curve. And I'll show you some fun techniques on how we're going to actually get that on. So we're going to set this aside for now, because what we're going to do now, mark our little marks. And if you notice, I kind of readjusted, so you're going to have to do this. When it was folded like this, I had you go from the side of the dart. Actually, what you need to do is take it at where that is folded, mark your little mark, and then the other one right beside that was the one, because that is how we're going to fold it. So it's going to be from this mark right here to this mark, not your other one. Okay, as you see, I flipped my fabric upside down so it's the wrong side facing up, and one side that you do, the other sleeve, you already have your markings there, but when we flip it over, we have to flip our pattern piece over too. So I just carefully remarked in the back where I saw my pencil seeing through. Then you're going to lift this up just a little bit and just mark the edge of your fabric. You don't want to go too far, just maybe about 1/8 of an inch, just right here and right here. And those are our marks when we fold it up. And that is our next step, because we want to get that little pleat back in there. So what's going to happen is I will fold this mark inward to this cut edge, and you do the same. You always fold them inward, and you'll have this little pleat. I am going to go press it down, and then I'll do a little tacking stitch right here to hold that pleat there. It'll be a lot easier for me when I go to attach the cuff back. So now, as you see, my pleat was completed, and I just tacked it. There's just a little bit of a tuck and a fold right here, just like the original sleeve. Now, what we want to do and what we're focusing on now is getting that placket, okay, onto this cutout piece. So I'm going to take my placket piece that I have. You can do one or two ways of doing this, and this is pressing again. We're going to press this before we even put it on here. If you have a good eye for a 1/4 of an inch, then you can eyeball it. If you don't have a good eye, then you can take a ruler, and these are actually quilting rulers. I love them because they have specifically 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and then they have, you know, an 1/8 inch, and it goes up from there. But if you want, you can actually place this on and draw your lines at the 1/2 inch, because you're folding it up to that, and it will actually be a 1/4 inch. So draw a 1/2 inch a line here, here, and then go down here and draw your other 1/2 inch, and then you're going to press and fold to that line. Okay? If you can see that, you're going to press and fold to that line on both sides. Then once those are pressed at that 1/4 inch on both sides, we're finishing off our edge, mind you, then you're going to press that together in half, and you will end up, not now because my little ends are 1/4 inches aren't in, you're going to end up with a 1/2 inch piece all pressed out. Be careful when you're pressing, because remember, we cut this on the cross grain and it's going to stretch on you. So if it gets a little wobbly or wonky, don't be alarmed, just kind of try to straighten it back out. But when I say press, you're pressing, 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 okay? You don't want to run it along like this. We're not ironing, we're pressing. That's just a little tip I'll give you. So all pressed and ready to attach. And if you notice, I'll open it up for you. This is what it should look like on the inside, okay? And what's going to happen is we're going to attach, okay, from end to end. It's going to sandwich all in there. This all the way around. I flipped my fabric over on the right side so you can see this. So it's going to go all the way around like this, okay? That's our end result. Now how do we get there? So now I am going to actually sew from this side, because I can see, especially when it gets tight in here, if I'm losing my stitching. I'm going to pin, and I'll be honest with you, when you see me, this is one of the exceptions I make. I will go slow and I will sew over my pins. There's a technique, but you just have to be very careful. If your pins get in the way, then take them out as soon as it's under the presser foot. But I do not want to lose or have my placket slip at all. So again, this is an exception to the rule. I am not going NASCAR on my sewing machine. I'm going more school zone speed, and that is one of the ways you can sew over your pins. So let's get started pinning. Now, if you'll notice, I'm going to take this, and when I'm pinning, hopefully I can get good angles for you, I'm actually pinning it, and it's going to go stretched out, and that's how we're going to sew. We have a little bit of a bunchy here, but when you sew this and you're going slow, you can get that all out of the way. So it's less daunting than trying to think, oh, how am I going to get this corner? But the corner actually turns to a straight edge. So there's another little fun tidbit for you. It's not that daunting as it looks. So I'm taking edge to edge, and I sandwiched it. So that sleeve is nestled in there. I'm putting a pin in there. I'm pinning this way. There'll be a lot of them. So I'm not hitting, when I'm hitting, if I hit a pin, then it will just go over that and not the head of the pin. And I am taking my time and pinning. Now, if you notice, I'm getting to this corner. And this corner, I'm going to have to really stretch out and lap that over. And I'm moving some of my little gathers, and I'm pinning right there. So it stays there. Now I'm going to check on this side to make sure that I have it all tucked in, and I do. So there we go. And now I'm actually going to pin this end before I do anything, so I know this is all going to fit, okay? And it's not going to stretch out on me and be way over. So I pinned this end just like I pinned when I started the very first end. Now I'm going to pin all in the middle. Here you go. You see that? Now look at that. Isn't that fun? So now I'm going to go sew this. I will sew this right at that edge, or just a little bit less. And I believe it should capture it. It might be just a little bit not right at the edge, but at least I'm capturing this. After I sew that up, I'm going to take it and I'm going to press it out. Okay, I have my placket. I thought you would want to see how it's done and me sewing over my pens. So what's going to happen is I'm going to be sewing as straight as I can, and then when I come down here, you'll notice that I will have my fingers in here stretching it out. Do you see that? That's what I mean by taking that and kind of mushing it. Now we'll take our pins out and press it. Now we got our placket sewn on. So our next step is, before we even touch to reattach the cuff, we need to sew our sleeve side seams together. Just like this. We need to sew them up. I'm going to pin again one end. Then I'll pin the other end, and I'll just pin it up all in the middle. Just like our side seams, I will sew this at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then I'll take it to my serger to finish off those seams so they don't ravel and fray during washings. And if you don't have a serger again, I would highly recommend utilizing your zigzag stitch. There's also, some of you all might have a stitch called an overcasting stitch. Look in your manual, and if you have one of those are just like a serger stitch, except for it's only using the 2 threads from your sewing machine, versus a serger can use 3 up to 5 threads at a time. So, but it gives that same effect. That's what we're going to do. Sew up, serge, and then of course I will also press my seam allowance, just like I did my side seams, off to the back. And actually your back is where we have the placket. Okay, so you're going to press that off to the side to give it a good crisp finish. So it's all pressed. It's serged, seamed, finished, and I pressed it off to my back side. I really wanted to show you how I utilized my sleeve board here. Okay, now I showed you the sleeve roll too. If you have one of those, or your grandma or whoever, grab it. She's not using it, but this just slips right over. Now I have it on the small side. Some of these are two-sided. Some of them are just this right here with looks like a little mini iron. Okay, I love this thing. Use it all the time. So but it helps to get those sleeves to press really, really nice. So now it's all done up, and our next step, we need to turn it right side out, because now we're bringing back the cuff and we're going to be attaching that. All right, I brought back the cuff here. So if you notice, your cuffs have a nice little fold, because you know those tuxedo shirts have that nice little cuff that you flap up, and then you use your buttons, your button holders, to put those together. So I have it where this is actually right side up. So, and we have our sleeve right side up too. Remember, we turned it inside out. So this is how you want it. You want it so you know it's flipping up. Okay, so this is how we're going to attach this to our sleeve. We will start at one end. Okay, do you see how I did that? I'm not starting here. You could, but I usually like to start here, get that pleat tucked in, and then we're going to go all the way around, pinning to the other end. Now, just like the yoke of the shirt, this is just sandwiched in. It's just tucked in there. The one thing I'm not going to be doing, like the yoke of the shirt, is I'm not going to be using a fusible, double-sided fusible tape or a double-sided sticky tape to base this on. I'm going to use pins again, and I will sew over my pins again, because what you'll find is, even though you did this little pleat, okay, already, you will have to almost kind of gradually gather this here and there. So I'm going to start on this end, and then when I get to probably about a halfway point, I'm going to attach this onto this end. I'm not going to do it right at the beginning, and you'll notice as I'm pinning. And then I might have to take a few pins out and maneuver it. Okay, it's just finessing your fabric inside. And you'll want to make sure that your fabric, you'll notice too that this actually dips down, way down there. You want your fabric actually just to lay right where that, there's like a, looks like a stitching line to me, but you want to lay your fabric just kind of maybe a 1/4 inch in, and that's it. And again, I'm going to pin it, and pin a lot, and I will be sewing over every single pin. So let's get started pinning. And if you notice, that is edge to edge, and that is how you want to start your first pin. So I pinned there, okay, and now what I'm going to do, because I don't know how much I have to kind of finesse and gather, I'm going to take this end, this is where it gets fun, I'm going to move that all the way to the end and pin that together. Okay. Now, if you notice, I have a lot more of this than my cuff. So carefully, and this will be good practice because we'll probably have to do this when we attach the whole entire sleeve to the armscye or armhole. So I'm just kind of okay, that is all pinned. There's a lot of pins in there. And I tried to, it's fussy. It's really fussy. So again, take your time and pin and make sure that it is in there, but not too far in there. And so when it folds up, it's going to look like that. So I'm going to edge sew right along here, right along my pins. How pretty amazing is this? We have both sleeves done now, and you should be working on both of your sleeves. So I have them facing this way, as in there is now a right and a wrong way to attach your sleeves back to your shirt body. And obviously we have a right side, or that's your left, and we have a left side. Okay, we have a right and a left. And how you determine that is, first of all, the shape of this. If you can see it. This tall piece goes to the shoulder part of, and this is down where under your arms are, okay? So let me shift this over here. Can you see those? Okay, so we have them facing each other. Do you see how that kind of goes? So I just wanted to let you know that. We also will be needing to put right sides together when we attach these sleeves. We will begin, and again, see, I always leave my serger thread tails until the end, until I start pinning them onto something, but we'll be starting from seam to seam. So the arm's eye, which is actually the technical term for the part we're working on, your arm's eye, which is your armhole, will be matching the seams. And then normally on a regular pattern, you actually have marks that you'll mark to know exactly how to pin. You will always have some easing up at the sleeve cap, which is at the top of your shoulder. That's what this is called, a sleeve cap. And you'll have some easing to do. And just like we did for our cuff, we did it with finesse, okay? And I did press that out a little bit. You can, if you want, do a basting stitch. If it's not that much, which usually it isn't, I usually just wing it and I ease with my pins and my hands. So, but we'll start from here. So since we don't have notches or markings for our sleeves because there was no pattern but our sleeve itself, we are going to pin, you'll see me pin like up kind of to here and then up to here, and then we'll go around and finesse and finagle. We don't want huge amounts of gathering. We want little bits. Now if you notice, I have my shirt back here and it is actually inside out, okay? I want this inside out and I want this right side out. The reason being is I'm going to, you can either slip it down or slip it up, doesn't matter, but I know I'm getting right sides together, okay? Now, since the only markings I have are my side seams to my regular shirt and my seam to my sleeve, those are what I'm going to put together. Now also, if you notice, I am pinning inside my sleeve, not on the shirt part. When we go to sew, you want to sew inside. I chose my right side this time, by the way. It doesn't matter which side you chose, just make sure that you get the right sleeve to the right arm, or you'll be seam ripping. Ask me how I know that too. So I'm just moving up this side of the arm, which is the front side. I can tell that because it's white. My back side is my fun fabrics. I'm going to just pin just a little ways up. I'll be honest with you, you might see me shuffling and taking out pins and reshuffling and putting pins back in, but once I get kind of up to the top here a little bit, I'm going to stop and then I'm going to go at it from the other way, which is this way. Okay, now I'm going to take it from the back and pin till I get up to that sleeve cap, and then we'll see how I ease it in. The back here I'll just pin up to the yoke because I have a reference. It's pretty crazy when you don't have little marks. And we are honestly, we're only doing a, so if you notice, it's gathering, but I'm mushing it down, so there shouldn't be any predominant gathers. This is another reason why you cannot, when you're pinning something like this in the round, you cannot have it laid flat, okay? And try pinning that way, keeping it up. You can maneuver. Awesome. We are going to be sewing on the inside of your arm's eye, okay? That means we're going to have all this fabric on the underside that we have to make sure that it, as soon as it gets up, it's not bunched up here and gets caught in our seam allowance, okay? Hopefully that's a good visual for you. I will stop a lot of times, I will reshift fabric so I know that everything is flat and smooth going around. I have to stop and I maneuver all this fabric underneath because all this is going to be underneath. So I hope that helps. So here we go. We're going to sew our 3/8 seam allowance, or whatever seam allowance that you measured your shirt at, and then I will serge, okay? And when I go to press this, I will be using that ham that I showed you at the beginning, which makes... Alright, just another little tip I wanted to show you before we really get the finishing off. Now, when I finished my stitching, it was just like this, right? So I turned it right side out because before I do any serging or you do any zigzagging to finish off that little bitty seam, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any of my shirt back up in my stitching that I had to release and redo. That happens sometimes. I was actually pretty good. I'm impressed with myself. So, and I sewed, mind you, all over my pins. I kept them in. I took them out just right before I turned it inside out. But it looks really good. I also wanted to make sure that my sleeve, I had more control over my sleeve because that obviously was on the top that I saw. But the back is what you wanted to make sure, the other big shirt, and I did awesome. So I don't know, you're going to do awesome too. Sorry, I had to oh my gosh, I did great. There are many times where I get just rushing and I have to unpick seams to redo it because I've had my shirt all munched up in there, okay? So now I will finish off the other sleeve and we're going to see the finished look. Check it out, guys. We are finished. You have now one amazing mess dress shirt freestyled. And in the military world, it's called a party shirt, just so you all know. But if you notice, the sleeves are all attached. The cuffs are attached. When he wears his jacket, it's all business and regulation. And then when the jacket comes off, bam, there are the sleeves. And in the back, it's all party in the back. So thank you for sewing with me, and I hope you learned something about restyling a shirt. This happens to be directed towards the military, but that doesn't mean that you can't take bits and pieces from what I've done to what you want to do in your sewing room. So there you have it. Oh, and I'm just going to keep it real. By the way, you know, I mentioned that the first sleeve went on and I was so excited on camera. I was so excited. Well, the second sleeve, yeah, I got out my seam ripper. So I'm just keeping it real. It happens. It happens to all of us. And you will become one with that seam ripper when you are in your sewing room. Till next time, thanks again.